Good morning, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. Grandpa in the living room with a cup of tea, greeting the morning. And this morning we're going to read Thidwick, the big-hearted, let's see, I don't know, like this. Thidwick, the Big-Hearted Moose by Dr. Seuss. If you notice, whenever I record on my computer, I have to reverse sides. I never know which side to point at or anything. So here's Thidwick. This looks like it's done in charcoal, where they take pieces of charcoal and they draw with it. And then there's also these colored, they're almost like a crayon. Or it might be pencil. So it would be colored pencil, and you can get the black pencils in a whole bunch of different different shades of from jet black to light gray. And then you get the pencils in all different colors. So this is extra moose moss for Helen. And this was both written and illustrated by Dr. Seuss, so I never thought about it before. We've read a few of these now. This might be the fifth one. And some people, they only write, and some people, they only make the drawings or the paintings for the book or take the pictures for the book. But Dr. Seuss apparently, at least for this book, did both of them. This book came out in 1948, which was 5 years before I was born. So right now this book is about 75 years old. And we're finding that these books are a lot different than the books that are out now. And you won't think too much of this while you're little guys, but you will as you get older. And then I'm hoping that someday you'll read these to your kids, and that you'll read all kinds of stuff to your kids, and also maybe play these videos sometimes when you can't read, because hopefully they'll still be around. And there's the beginning page. Up at Lake Wannabango, the far northern shore, lives a huge herd of moose, about 60 or more. And they all go around in a big happy bunch, looking for nice tender moose moss to munch. So there's a whole bunch of them, and they all look like Thidwick. Up at Lake Winnebago one day they were lunching, just strolling along and enjoying their munching. For the moose moss that day was especially fine. When it happened that Thidwick, the last moose in line, saw a single bug sitting, the bug called out, "Hey, it's such a long road and it's such a hot day. Would you mind if I rode on your horns for a way?" So there's a bug that wants to ride on his horns, and here's the bug talking to Thidwick. See the bug down there? Talking to Thidwick. Of course not, smiled Thidwick. So he's not saying, of course not, you're not allowed to ride on my horns. He's saying, of course not, of course I wouldn't mind. Little thing like having a bug on my grandmother. Your grandmother would mind. She hates bugs. She's bug phobic. She's one of those people that, and little rodents too. If there was a mouse in the house, she would jump up on a chair, scream. Of course not, smiled Thidwick, the big-hearted moose. I'm happy my antlers can be of some use. There's room there to spare, and I'm happy to share. Be my guest, and I hope that you're comfortable there. So the bingle bug picked out a nice, easy seat. Oh, that's what he's called, a bingle bug. So I thought it was saw a single bug, but he saw a bingle bug. So the bingle bug picked out a nice, easy seat, and the moose went on looking for moose moss to eat. And, oh yeah, I didn't show you this page. So there he is, and the bug's up there at the top. Right along. The bingle bug. Well, an hour or so later, the bug heard a squeak, and he heard the small voice of a tree spider speak. I say, said the spider, you've got a fine place. That moose seems quite friendly, has such a nice face. If I got on too, do you think he would mind? And here's the bug up there talking to the spider, and the spider's hanging down. Hop aboard, laughed the bug, and I think that you'll find that the moose won't object. He's the big-hearted kind. I accept, said the spider with joy and delight, and he started a web on the horn to the right. So, yeah, not only does he get on Thidwick's antlers, but he starts spinning himself a web, because that's spiders live in webs that they spin. While the spider was spinning, he heard a gay song, and a fresh little zinazoo bird came along. He stopped and he stared and he chirped, well, 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 what a smart place to build, what a great place to dwell. I've been living on trees ever since I was born, but here's something new. Why not live on a horn? If there's room there for two, then there's room there for three. There's plenty of room, laughed the bug, and it's free. So they're squatters. So here's what's happening. That's the bird, the red one, coming down. Thidwick stopped walking. What was all that talking? These guests had caught Thidwick the moose unawares. Hey, he called out, what goes on upstairs? What goes on there upstairs? He's hearing people talking. Well, he's hearing animals talk, birds and bugs, birds and arachnids talking, or whatever. I don't know what bugs are. Just building a nest, sir, the zinazoo said, and began yanking hairs out of poor Thidwick's head. And he plucked out exactly 204. Don't worry, he laughed. You can always grow more. There he is. making a nest out of hairs. Then he dozed off to sleep. He dozed off to sleep in his fine moose hair nest. This bird, murmured Thidwick, is sort of a pest. But I'm a good sport, so I'll just let him rest. For a host, above all, must be nice to his guests. There he is, just sitting there up on Thidwick. And Olive, where your the Egyptian side of your family is, and it's not like we don't like having guests on the other side of the family, but from the Arab world, they hold that in high regard, that you're hospitable to guests, that you're responsible for guests. And as we read through the Bible in the through the Bible with Grandpop series, we see that back in the Middle East in ancient times when the Bible was written, that the stories, a lot of them have to do with having a guest and making sure that that guest is safe and well fed. Besides, now it's getting quite late in the day, and surely tomorrow they'll all go away. Don't be so sure, Thidwick. But alas, the next morning the sun's early light brought to Thidwick's sad eyes the most unwelcome sight. So here he is at night. Meet my wife, said the bird. I was married last night. And perhaps, by the way, I should mention to you that her uncle is coming to live with us, too. You're a very fine host, so I knew you'd be willing. And look at Thidwick. Thidwick's like, what? Wait, what? What? There we go, now we're on focus. What? Then uncle, a woodpecker, then the uncle, a woodpecker. So now, birds are kind of related to other birds, but you can't have like a Thinabin or whatever the heck this kind of bird is, and his uncle is a woodpecker. Just it's not like that. But for the story, it sounds good. So woodpeckers actually sit on trees and peck at the wood. I guess they eat it or they do something with it. And you can hear them up in the tree going da 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 da. Then the uncle, a woodpecker, started drilling. And look at poor Thidwick down there. He doesn't know what to do. All Thidwick's friends shouted, "Get rid of those pests." "I would, but I can't," sobbed poor Thidwick. "They're guests." "Guests indeed," his friends answered, and all of them frowned. "If those are your guests, we don't want you around. You can't stay with us, because you're just not our sort." And they all turned their backs and walked off with a snort. Oh, that sucks. Look, they're like amazed at all these creatures up on his antlers. And then they walk away. Now the big friendless moose walked alone and forlorn, with 4 great big woodpecker holes in his horn. What holes?" whispered Herman, a squirrel who spied him. What holes to hide? Oh, he goes, what holes? He's not asking, what holes? What holes? Whispered Herman, a squirrel who spied him. What holes to hold nuts in? Mind if I tried them? So now, wait, there he is. This page. And then it looks like a bunch of squirrels. They're yours, called the woodpecker. Get right inside him. This big-hearted moose runs a public hotel. Bring your nuts, bring your wife, bring your children as well. So the whole squirrel family jumped on pell-mell. And I think pell-mell is like willy-nilly. You don't know what either of those things mean, but I don't want to get into it now. It's chaos. And the very next thing the poor animal knew, a bobcat. A bobcat's pretty big. Frank, I don't know if your family up there in New Jersey has a cat, but Arlo and Olive, your families right now have cats, and bobcat's bigger than those cats, and it's living up there. Now, what was the big-hearted moose going to do in there? So there's, see the bobcat up there, the bird, and the squirrels, birds in the nest, the bugs. But what would you do if it happened to you? So let me ask you right now, would you kick them out? You wouldn't say scat, because that wouldn't be right. You couldn't shout scram, because that isn't polite. A host has to put up with all kinds of pests, for a host above all must be nice to his guests. So you try hard to smile and you try to look sweet, and you go right on looking for moose moss to eat. So it's like, just stay in your lane, Thidwick, and allow this crap to happen to you. Dr. Seuss can be very sarcastic. But now it was winter, and that wasn't easy. For moose moss gets scarce when the weather gets freezy. The food was soon gone on the cold northern shore of Lake Winnebago. There just was no more. And all Thidwick's friends swam away in a bunch to the south of the lake, where there's moose moss to munch. He watched the herd leaving, and then Thidwick knew he'd starve if he stayed. He'd have to go too. And so there's Thidwick watching them all traipse out into the lake to swim across. And what's he gonna do? Poor Thidwick. Gotta keep my voice from failing. We still have some more to go in this book. He stepped in the water. Then, oh, what a fuss. Stop, screamed his guests. You can't do this to us. So now they have rights. These horns are our home, and you've no right to take our home to the far distant side of the lake. Be fair, Thidwick begged, with a lump in his throat. So here's, they're all yelling at him because he wants to go in the lake and go across to the other side. We're fair, said the bugs. We're fair, said the bug. We'll decide this by vote. All those in favor of going say aye. All those in favor of staying say nay. Aye, shouted Thidwick. But when he was done, so what do you think's going to happen now? What happens in a vote? Everybody gets one vote. Nay, they all yelled. He lost 11-1. And there's, see the red up there? That's nay. Nay. So apparently there's 11 voting age creatures up there. We win, screamed the guests, by a very large score, and poor starving Thidwick climbed back on the shore. Then do you know what those pests did? What do you think they did? They asked in some more. So they started, now they've taken over, they can vote. And so Thidwick, it's his antlers, but he only gets one vote. And now they're inviting more. And it reminds me of a modern day story that we're living right now. Right now we're having problems with voting in our country. But this is story time with Grandpa. We're not going to go there. They asked in a fox who jumped in from the trees. They asked in some mice, and they asked in some fleas. They asked a big bear, and then, if you please, came a swarm of 362 bees. Poor Thidwick sank down with a groan to his knees, and then came something that made his heart freeze. So let's just put this up here for a minute. See the bees coming in, and there's a bear up there. Fox is jumping down from a tree. Looks like there's a turtle. Everybody's having a good old time. The bees are not only swarming in, but they've also built like a bee's hive up there. Yeah. What do you think's going to happen now? Bullets came zinging right past Thidwick's face. Guns were banging all over the place. Get that moose! Get that moose! Thidwick heard a voice call. Fire again and again and shoot straight, one and all. We must get his head for the Harvard Club wall. So now not only does he have all these creatures living in his head, but all these dudes are trying to kill him and chop off his head and have it stuffed. It's called taxidermy, where you stuff an animal, you put his head, you make a trophy out of it and say, oh, look what I killed. And we kill animals for food in our modern society, but most hunters eat what they kill. That's why they hunt. I mean, that's not the only reason. But they enjoy going out into nature. And, I mean, vegans don't like it, but vegans are cranky people. Thidwick took Thidwick took to his heels with that load on his head. With 500 pounds on his horns, the moose fled. He could have run faster without all those pests, but a host above all must be nice to his guests. Up canyon, off cliff, over wild rocky trail with bullets bang bouncing around him like hail, up gully through gulch and down slippery sluice, with his hard-hearted guests raced soft-hearted moose. They have a hard heart. All they care about is them. Voting stuff for themselves. Imagine that. See all those guys with the guns are after them. I can't imagine that many hunters with guns wouldn't have shot this moose already. Or at least popped the bear off his head. But it is, after all, fiction. Then finally they had him. Because of those pests, he had run out of luck. Because of those guests on his horns, he was stuck. He gasped. He felt faint, and the whole world grew fuzzy. Thidwick was finished completely. Or was he? So they have him. Got him dead to rights. Got him in their sights. Getting ready to bust a cap in him. And all these things were up on top of him, looking like, no, what you doing? Let's see if I can get in focus. There we go. Is that a focus again? See them all looking out. And why don't they just jump off? Especially since they're around the body of water there. Finished? Not Thidwick. Decidedly not. It's true, he was in a most terrible spot. But now he remembered the thing he'd forgot. A wonderful something that happens each year to the horns of all moose and the horns of all deer. Do you know what that is? Maybe, Frank, you might. Today was the day Thidwick happened to know. But I don't know if this happens on a specific day. I think it just happens at a specific time of the year and things like temperature and stuff like that have more to do with it than the specific day. But once again, this is fiction. So what do you think happens once a year? They shed. What is shedding? That old horns come off so that new ones can grow. And he called to the pests on his horns as he threw them. You wanted my horns. Now you're quite welcome to them. Keep them, they're yours. As for me, I shall take myself to the far distant side of the lake. And so when they shed, they just fall off his head. And if you go out into the woods, you can find a certain time of year, you find that they're not moose antlers. There's no moose around here. They're like up in Alaska, northern Canada, Russia, places like that. But you can find the antlers after deer. And he swam Winnebago and found his old bunch and arrived just in time for a wonderful lunch. at the south of the lake where there's moose moss to munch. And here's all his buddies going, oh, you got rid of the pest? Cool. They're all antlerless too. Yeah, they grow new antlers. There are all kinds of animals, of creatures and stuff that either molt or shed and then grow new things. Crabs, which your grandmother and I love to eat. Blue point crabs. They shed their entire shell, their entire body, and then they're soft, and I guess they hide. And the body grows, and then they grow a new shell on top of the body. So every year they shed and grow, and then grow a new shell on there. His old horns today are where you knew they would be. His guests are still on them, all stuffed as they should be. You wouldn't end a book like this now, because the hunters shot all those animals that were up on top there, because they were like, look at this. So that's the Harvard Club, and that's one of the hunters standing there, and he's got his rifle underneath there, like, oh, I got all these creatures. I got a bear and a woodpecker and a fox, and are there even bees? Yeah, the horn of the bees hive is up there, everything. So they're stuffed on the wall. That's quite a story, isn't it? Of Thidwick, the big-hearted moose. Peace out. There go the balloons.